All right, everybody, welcome back. Get ready, because today we're going deep on cybersecurity.
Ooh, exciting.
Right. Specifically, we're looking at these Iranian cyber attacks that have been making headlines. If you're listening to this, you've probably seen those headlines and thought, okay, what's really going on here?
Definitely. It's a bit overwhelming just from the headlines.
Yeah, it can be. So we've been digging through reports and expert analysis from cybersecurity agencies like in Australia, Canada, the US.
Wow, covering all the bases.
Had to for this one. And what we found, let me tell you, this isn't just some kids in a basement messing around.
Oh, no, definitely not.
This is geopolitical tensions playing out online with real-world impacts.
It's fascinating, to see how these attacks are changing and adapting.
It is. We're hearing a lot about, terms like brute force and password spraying.
Right.
But for our listeners who aren't, fluent in hacker jargon, can you break those down for us?
Yeah, sure. So imagine you have like a giant key ring with tons of keys on it, and you just try every single key until one unlocks the door. That's basically brute force, trying a huge number of different password combinations.
Until one works.
Exactly.
So just like a lock, eventually you'll find the right key.
Exactly, yeah. Password spraying's a little different. It's a bit more targeted. It's more like trying one really common password.
Yeah.
Password 123.
Oh, yeah.
Across a ton of different accounts, hoping that, at least one person was a little lazy with their security.
And let's be honest, we've probably all been guilty of that at some point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why these kind of simple methods, they're still surprisingly effective. They exploit human nature, right? Like our tendency to go for the easy password or use the same one for everything. They're also using this thing called MFA prompt bombing.
Okay, MFA prompt bombing. Now that sounds intense.
It is. Imagine your phone just blowing up with nonstop notifications.
Oh, no.
All asking you to approve a login attempt, and it just won't stop.
Yeah.
Super annoying.
I can see how you'd just give in.
Yeah, eventually you're probably just going to hit yes to make it stop, right? And bam, the attacker's in.
Scary how effective that is. So any advice for our listeners? What can we do as everyday users to protect ourselves from these attacks?
Good news is there are some simple but powerful things you can do. First, use strong, unique passwords.
For every account?
Every single account.
Okay, no repeats.
No repeats. Think of it like having a separate key for your house, your car, your office. If someone steals one, they don't get everything.
That's a great way to put it.
And then, whenever you can, enable multi-factor authentication, MFA. It's like adding an extra lock on your digital life.
Double the protection.
Exactly. And always, always be wary of any links or emails that seem even a little suspicious.
I think we've all seen those phishing scams.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere. And they're often how these attacks start. So if something feels off, don't click.
Good advice. Now, who exactly are these attackers targeting? Is it just, government agencies, big corporations, or should we all be concerned?
It's a wide range, honestly. We're seeing attacks on healthcare, government, IT, engineering, even the energy sector.
Wow, so not just like spies and secrets anymore. We're talking hospitals, power grids.
Yeah, it's getting much more serious. And it's because these sectors hold really sensitive data, right? Disrupting them can cause huge problems.
So it's not just data breaches, it's about causing real chaos, real harm.
Exactly. It's a different game now.
So let's say they do get past all our defenses. What happens then? Can you walk us through like the typical steps of an attack? What do they do once they're in?
Well, the reports show a kind of pattern, like a playbook they're following. First, they get that initial access, often through, compromised credentials, those weak passwords we were talking about.
Right, so they're in, but they're not just randomly messing things up.
No, they're strategic about it.
So what's next?
Reconnaissance. They map out the entire network, kind of like a burglar scoping out a house, right? Figuring out the layout, where the valuable stuff is.
Makes sense. What comes after that?
From there, it's about privilege escalation. Basically getting higher level access within the system. Think of it like getting your hands on the master key that unlocks every door in the building.
Oh, that's not good.
And then comes the really scary part, lateral movement. They start spreading to other parts of the network like a virus.
Compromising more and more as they go.
Yeah. And finally, they focus on persistence. Setting up backdoors, other ways to keep access even if they're discovered.
So it's not a quick in and out job. They're trying to stay hidden, embedded.
Yeah, long-term access is the goal.
And we've heard they're using some pretty advanced techniques to do all this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One that's becoming more common is living off the land.
Okay, what does that mean?
So they use legitimate system tools, but for malicious purposes. Like a burglar using your own tools to break into your house. Harder to detect, harder to trace.
Sneaky.
Right. They're also exploiting known vulnerabilities, basically weaknesses in software that haven't been patched.
Like a weak spot in a building they can use to get in?
Exactly. One example is CVE 2020-1472, also called ZeroLogon. It's a flaw that can let them take over entire networks.
Oh, wow. That's serious.
And to make it even worse, they're even registering their own devices with MFA systems
Yeah.
to make it look like legitimate access.
That's how sophisticated they've become. Okay, so they're in, they have access, they're hidden. What's the ultimate goal? Is it all about chaos and disruption? Or is there something more to it?
It's not always about chaos, no. Sometimes it's, well, it's more about stealth. Think about it. Stolen credentials,
Yeah.
network info, that stuff's gold on the dark web. It's like digital burglary, but for resale.
So instead of just, crashing the place, they're quietly gathering intel, building a digital arsenal to sell off.
Exactly, yeah. And it's a trend we're seeing more and more, this collaboration between, like, nation-state actors and cybercriminals.
It's almost like, what, governments outsourcing their dirty work.
Yeah, it really blurs the lines.
That's a chilling thought. Okay, but what's the ultimate prize? What are they really after? You mentioned Active Directory earlier. Can you explain what that is and why it's such a tempting target for these attackers?
So imagine, like, the central nervous system of a company's entire network, right? Controls who has access to what, manages all the user accounts, keeps everything running smoothly.
Okay, so it's like the control center for an organization's whole digital world.
Exactly. And that's why it's such a high-value target.
I can see why. If you control Active Directory, you basically control everything.
Right. And the scary thing is, the methods they're using to attack it, they aren't even that new or complex. It often comes down to exploiting, like, basic misconfigurations or weak security practices.
So it's not some super secret hacker code. It's more like taking advantage of basic oversights.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as, like, an administrator account with a weak password, or a system that hasn't been updated with the latest security patches.
So leaving the back door wide open.
Exactly. The reports even highlight things like credential dumping, where they try to steal passwords straight from a computer's memory.
Oh, wow. So it's like someone rifling through your wallet when you're not looking.
Yeah, basically.
You also mentioned Kerberoasting earlier. What is that exactly?
Ah, yes. Well, imagine a castle, right?
Right.
With all these guards and checkpoints. Kerberoasting is like finding a secret passage that bypasses all those defenses and goes straight to the treasure vault.
So exploiting a weakness in the authentication process, basically.
Exactly.
And once they're in, it sounds like they can do some serious damage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Steal data, install malware, even take control of crucial systems.
So they basically have the keys to the kingdom.
You got it. And that's why protecting Active Directory is so important. It's often the main target.
Okay, so what can companies do to protect themselves? Is it all about, like, hiring expensive cybersecurity teams and fancy tech solutions?
Well, those things can help, for sure. But it doesn't have to be overly complicated. The basics are still crucial. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, those are non-negotiable.
Like the digital equivalent of locking your doors and windows.
Exactly. But it goes further than that. Companies need to keep their systems updated, patch those vulnerabilities, and have strong security policies in place. And, just as important, they need regular security audits, like a thorough checkup for their entire network.
So it's a combination of being proactive and staying vigilant.
You got it.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, but let's zoom out for a second. What's the bigger picture here? What are the motivations behind these Iranian cyber attacks?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. These attacks, they're not happening in isolation. They're part of a larger geopolitical struggle playing out online.
So are we talking cyber warfare, nations using digital weapons?
In a way, yes. It's a new kind of battlefield where the rules are still being written and the stakes are incredibly high.
So these attacks, they could be about espionage, stealing secrets, or maybe sabotage, disrupting infrastructure, or even just sending a message, showing off their cyber capabilities.
It could be any of those, or all of them.
Like attacks on energy infrastructure, like power grids, that could be about crippling a country's economy.
Right, or causing chaos.
Yeah.
Sowing discontent among the population.
And attacks on government agencies could be aimed at stealing info, disrupting services, maybe even influencing elections.
It's a dangerous game, with the stakes getting higher all the time.
And as we discussed, the involvement of cybercriminals just makes it even more complex.
Absolutely. More players, more motives.
So, We've got nation states with their cyber armies, we've got cyber criminals driven by profit or chaos, and everyone in between all fighting for control in this digital Wild West. Where does that leave the average person? Are we just sitting ducks in all this?
It is a big question, yeah. We've been focusing on these, high-level attacks, but how does it all affect us, you and me, everyday internet users?
That's what I'm wondering. It all seems very, shadowy and secret. But do we need to worry?
Well, think of it this way. Even if these attacks seem distant, targeting, governments or corporations, the ripple effects can be huge. Everyone feels them. It's like throwing a stone into a pond.
Okay.
The impact is small at first, but the waves spread out and touch everything.
Okay, I like that.
Hmm.
Can you give us an example? Like, how could this actually affect someone who's not a politician or a tech CEO?
Sure. Imagine a cyber attack that shuts down a major hospital system, right?
Oh.
Suddenly, no one can access medical records, surgeries get delayed, equipment might malfunction. That affects anyone who needs medical care, and at the worst possible time.
That hits close to home. Suddenly, it's not just about, data theft or passwords. It's life or death.
Exactly. And it goes beyond healthcare, too. Energy grids, transportation, banks. Disrupting any of those has a huge impact on everyone's lives. Your bank account could be frozen, your commute could be impossible, the power could go out.
This is getting scary. Is there anything we can do? Or are we just helpless?
Not helpless at all. We can't stop nation-state attacks on our own, but we can make ourselves harder targets. It's about being proactive, building a better defense.
So, like building a more secure digital house, what are the essential steps?
Think of it as layers of protection, right? First layer is basic cyber hygiene. Strong passwords, different for each account, and turn on multi-factor authentication everywhere you can. It's like locking your doors and windows.
It's surprising how many people still don't do that.
It's like leaving a welcome mat for the hackers.
Hmm.
The next layer is awareness. Be careful about suspicious emails, links, attachments. If it feels fishy, don't click. It could be a phishing scam trying to trick you.
Yeah, those "you won $1 million" emails are always a red flag.
Definitely. And keep your software updated. Those updates often include security patches to fix vulnerabilities.
So stay updated, stay alert.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. We can all make the digital world safer.
It's like a neighborhood watch, but online.
That's a good way to put it. We have to look out for each other, share information, and stay ahead of the bad guys.
So even with these evolving threats, with nation states working with cyber criminals, it's not hopeless.
Not at all. This constant back and forth is driving innovation in cybersecurity. New tools, new strategies.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not. We've got cybersecurity experts working around the clock to protect us. And as individuals, we can learn the best practices, make ourselves less vulnerable, and contribute to a safer digital world.
Working together, we can make a difference.
Absolutely. It's a team effort. We're all in this together.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground. We've learned about how these Iranian attacks are evolving, the geopolitical factors involved, and most importantly, what we can all do to protect ourselves in this ever-changing landscape. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay safe out there.